To be able to create a form, there's two ways to do it. Either through the template center that we have here, which is pre-made templates of all the forms, or we can choose to create a blank form up here. Once we add the form name and hit create, we'll then have a blank template to choose from. We'll see here that we can also still view the templates once the form is blank. So if we did still want to apply a template, we can from here as well. What we'll go through is we'll go through the basics of the types of fields and what they do. And we'll also go through the configuration on the right-hand side sidebar. This will cover the incident, assigning as an incident use, care plans, and client general docs as well. We'll start with actually adding a few fields to the form. So on the left-hand side here, we have our input fields and selection, which is the most common. And all we have to do is drag them onto the canvas here. Depending on what type of field we do need, if we need phone number, for an example, address, we can add those onto it and it'll be specific towards them. Things like rich text and long text, these are both text fields that the submitter can input, but one will have a rich text format, your bold, list, things like that as well. For example, dot points, and the other will just be your general text field. So depending on what type of style you do need. The main difference between these and the layout section paragraphs, these are where we can come in and add custom text to it, which then can't be filled by the user. Only the rich text and text area sections within the input fields. So if we have a look at that, we can see that the text paragraph here, so these can be your descriptions, things like that. Then the rich text section is where the user will input the text. Also on the left-hand side here, we have client and staff select. So if this is an internal form, this will allow for selecting a client from the dropdown, as well as a staff member if needed. These can only be used on internal forms. So if you go and try and publish a form live, it's going to block you because of these client and staff selectors. So these can only be used internally. Also on the left-hand side, common ones are the advanced sections with the signature and table. So if you have a care service agreement, care plan, etc., you can add a signature field where the client or staff member will be able to come in and type or draw a signature. The file upload can be used for any file submissions, such as staff onboarding form, for an example, where they'll be able to come in and upload a document with the submission itself. What the price book table will allow you to do is if you're creating a quote, for an example, you'll be able to create this as a read only and then select the options for this price book itself. Once you do this, anyone who views this form itself through the link, because it has a read only selected, they'll be able to see the selection that we've entered, but they won't be able to make any changes to it. You also see this menu that appears within fields themselves. You can access this by selecting the field settings icon here, which will open the dropdown. Or if you right click on the field anywhere, it's also going to open it here. Depending on the field type, it's going to have different options. So for the price book, for an example, it's going to have a lot more options than your standard input fields. So this is where you'll be able to configure it, mark if it's read only, for an example, set the label, description, and width if needed, and a few different options depending on the actual field itself. On the left-hand sidebar, we have the fields, but we also have a steps section. So if you need to have a multiple step form, if it's quite a long form, you can come in and add multiple steps to it. And depending on the configuration that you have on the right-hand sidebar, if allow step navigation is turned off, the user who is submitting the form can only see one step at a time. But with it turned on, they'll be able to essentially have a look through the form itself, but they'll still have to input all the required fields before actually submitting. Also on the right-hand side here, this is where we can configure the form style itself. So if we want to add a company logo to it, we can either upload or use our company website. as well as add any cover images. So if you're creating a care service agreement, for example, you'll be able to add your logo, add a banner if needed, colors, or upload an actual image itself. Also on the right hand side, this is where we'll have the assigned responses to. So whoever is assigned for this specific form will receive an email notification once a submission has been made. This will work the same with the incidents as well. So if we have this assigned as an incident form and we have someone assigned to the responses, they're also going to receive an email about the submission itself. The other two sections here, the success screen and the conditional visibility. There is actually a third one, which is the conditional routing, and it will only show if you are able to input it itself. So with the conditional visibility, if we have a select field on the same step, what we'll be able to do is configure if this text field, for example, is always showing, or if it only shows based on the previous field's selections. So if we choose show conditionally, we're able to choose the options that makes this field show. So for this example, if select equals option 1, it's going to show this text field here. So if I choose option 2 in the preview, we only have the single field still. If I choose option 1, that next field is going to show there. This is similar to the conditional routing itself. So if we have a multiple step form, what we can do is set up a conditional route. So with this, it works the same as the conditional visibility. Depending on a certain selection made in a previous step, we can have the user skip a certain step, like step 2, for example, and go straight to the success screen, or go to another step if there are multiple. If I come in and preview this, if I select option 1, the button's now changed to submit. Option 2 will make me go to the next step based on the certain answer itself. When it comes to publishing the form, there's two types of ways, internally and live. If we're just using it for a client's care plan, for example, we don't have to actually publish it at all. But if we want to share a link or use it throughout the whole app, then we will have to either publish it internally or live. Publishing internally will mean only users with an account within inside the organization can access it. So even if you copy the share link and share it with a team, if someone doesn't have login access to it, they won't be able to access it. Publishing live will allow you to copy the link and share it with anyone. So if you have a client intake form, a feedback form, for example, be able to publish it live, copy the link, and then share that with anyone. The form like this on a public URL. We come over to a client's profile. There's two places to use them inside of here. One is the files section. So if we have a general document, for example, we'll be able to use a form here. Then once we actually submit it, we can also then view it as a form submission if needed. This works very similar to the care plan section. If we have a care plan that we are using, once we have the form open and we submit it, it's going to come through as a form model like this. And if needed, we can still make amendments to it through the edit button here. Once we resubmit it, that will then be updated in that client's profile. Moving on to incidents. If we come into the incident profile here, we'll now see that there's a section for incident form specifically. So any form that is assigned as an incident form is going to show up here. There's a few ways to actually create and assign an incident form. The easiest way is inside of the template picker when we go to create a new one. There's now a new tab down here for record creation. These fields that are selected here, these are the system and custom attributes. So inside of the incident profile on the right sidebar, any fields that you've added, date selectors, things like that, they will show up as options here. It's all going to be pre-configured for you already, which makes it easy. Once we go create incident form, this is going to create the form based on those incident fields that we do already have. So if you're needing to quickly create one without much configuration, this is going to be the quickest way for it. You can still come in and edit and delete any fields that aren't needed. But essentially how this works is if we publish this form and we receive a submission, because these fields are mapped inside of the incident profile, all of these responses are going to pre-fill the sidebar here based on that form submission. Any fields that aren't mapped will still be accessible via the original form submission itself. But if we need to gather all the information without manually inputting it, we can have these all as form fields, for an example. That way, when the form submission does come in, we can see all the details on the right sidebar here. All of these can still be edited, but the main form submission itself will still be maintained. If we already have an incident form that we've created it manually, for an example, we can still map the fields to the custom and system attributes, and that is done by this configure button here. So if we have a form, for an example, that we're currently using, and it's just a standard form that we've built here, by default, this user's incident form is going to be turned off. Once we actually turn it on, we'll have the option to configure the fields that are on the form to map against the fields that we have inside an incident profile. So the incident title, for an example, the description, if we have a form field that matches a text area, we'll be able to have that and map it towards a description field. Once these are mapped and we publish the form, any submissions that we receive are now going to create a form submission as well as automatically create an incident record inside of here. Inside of the incidents profile is where we can also see all the forms that have been, and from here we can also view and submit, as well as view the individual submissions for that incident form that's been assigned. If you already have a form that's live and you go to assign it as an incident form, if it isn't mapped correctly, it's going to show a warning banner up here, which essentially means the form submissions will still come through as normal, but it won't be creating an incident record until the mapping is completed. For the mapping, the minimum requirement is a title itself. So once you do map the title, that warning will now be gone, and any form submission submitted after that will then create the submission and the incident record. The submissions now have also been updated. So when you first come to the submissions tab, it's going to list all of your forms here. And by clicking on a certain form, we'll list all the submissions inside one group based on the column field itself. The easiest way to share an incident form that's been published live is either through the roster itself when we're creating a new shift or updating one. Inside of the appointment notes comments section, we're able to add the link of the form and create it as a link that anyone on the mobile app can then access it, click on it. Inside of the client's profile as well, if we wanted to, inside of the client's profile, if we wanted to assign a link to the client general notes section as well, we also do have the option to then make it visible on the mobile app. So if we have an incident form here, for an example, and we then show to toggle on show in mobile app, any support worker or staff member, when they go into that client's profile on the mobile, will then be able to also see this link. So it'll be two ways, either through these general notes or through the roster comments itself. There is the option if you do need to embed the form on a website, for example. Once a form is published live, there'll be the ability to embed it, where you'll be able to copy the code and then paste it